good about this is now we can demand that all other media rise to meet that benchmark. What do you think?
Yep.
Yeah.
And with that, let's give a warm New York welcome to Richard Gage.
Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Theater 80 in the East Village of New York on 9/11/2014. Like Les said, 13 years. For us at E911 Truth, it's been 8 years. And it's like plodding along. But once in a while, something wonderful along that path happens. And one of those things that happened is we created a film called 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. And one person can make a difference, and that one person is our filmmaker tonight, Mr. David Hooper. And it's an honor for me to introduce his film, in fact. David is a businessman turned filmmaker, a regular family man who unwittingly stumbles into the 9/11 debate. How many of you unwittingly stumbled into the 9/11 debate in which you never had? Yeah. Leading to his own personal investigation and many life-changing conclusions after researching the 9/11 evidence for himself. Everybody has to do this for ourselves. That's where the starting point is. The resulting film, The Anatomy of a Great Deception, is a fast-paced story of his personal 9/11 exploration, presented in a way that you'll be able to really connect with, no matter what side of the 9/11 fence you're on. That's the good news about this film, because it bridges the gap between the missing 9/11 evidence and those who are unaware that it even needs to be considered. I was deeply inspired by the open mind exhibited in David's quest for the truth, particularly when he found himself retreating behind that arbitrary line in the sand that he had drawn for himself for his own psychological safety in the beginning of his journey. How many of you had that line in the sand? Yeah. Okay, I'll come this farther, but not any farther. Don't mess with my worldview, right? David discovered for himself while making the film that logic beat out my former dismissive conventional thinking self, which never would have considered any of this evidence even remotely possible before. You had that experience. It was not something he could understand in one sitting. It was going to take some time. He also notes profoundly in the film, something big and strange was coming into view, seemingly coordinated and almost invisible, and then dumped out before me like 1,000 puzzle pieces. My belief system would be shattered, but eventually rebuilt to accommodate my evolving worldview. After David finally realizing that the 3 towers must have been brought down by controlled demolition, he came to this awareness. I had taken my first step down the rabbit hole. Little did I know how much deeper it would go. Watch your own mind and its tendencies during your exploration of these issues. After tonight's film, I'm sure that you too will find that you'll have hundreds of questions swimming through your mind. This is one of the marvelous signs of the open mind that we're inviting you to maintain during your own personal inquiry into the ever-unfolding truth about 9/11. Even his wife Betsy and family and friends at first didn't believe what David was trying to say about his own personal discoveries. I can relate. 8 years ago when I heard David Ray Griffin on the radio, Bonnie Faulkner's show Guns and Butter, Berkeley's KPFA radio station. She being one of the few radio stations that will air the truth about 9/11 here in New York. Of course, WBAI, certain hosts like Gary Null, for instance, who was willing to step out and tell the truth about 9/11, interview those people who have direct experience, knowledge, information, evidence about it. Well, I was shocked when I heard in March of 2006 this information. Surely I would have heard about it on mainstream media. Here I am, a Reagan Republican, ready to go to war in Iraq. I already have supporting the war in Iraq at that time. Going to go get those guys who did this to us. I bought the myth, hook, line, and sinker, as did David before his evolving personal world view. I was quite shocked when I realized that, my God, these towers didn't come down due to jet plane impacts and fires, as you'll see in the movie. I had to do something myself, so I started with one architect, the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. Today we have 2,253, which is beautiful. We had given that petition when we had 1,000 to every member of Congress, along with our DVD at the time, 9/11 Blueprint for Truth. And when we had 2,000, we gave it to every member of Congress, along with the DVD, 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out. And we're not stopping. As Les mentioned, we have a worldwide, international campaign, Rethink 9/11, The Evidence Might Surprise You, in 12 international cities with a $500,000 billboard campaign that you, the supporters of the 9/11 Truth Movement, and you who are not yet aware that you're supporters of the 9/11 Truth Movement will be after this film. Don't worry, it happens to all of us. It'll happen to you too. It's just something you can't avoid very long. I wasn't able to. But listen closely. You too will find some of the jewels that I discovered in this film that helped me and may help you to understand the complexity implied by the evidence. In order to preserve his sanity and to try to save his marriage, David compiled the pieces of what eventually became tonight's film, Anatomy of a Great Deception. He made it in order to speak to his wife, Betsy, directly. Early on, she refused to even discuss 9/11, but is now one of the film's biggest fans. Indeed, Betsy told me the other night, personally, that this film saved her marriage. So the film worked, right? So it can work for you. It's been described as the ultimate red pill. As you'll see, it walks people gently through the evidence. Unlike 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out, which just dumps it right in your lap and tells you to deal with it. Of course, we've had 8 psychologists at the end of that film helping you to deal with it. But even that, they just take you deeper down the rabbit hole. This stuff's not easy for anybody. Actually, the film did, in fact, though, pave way for all of us. It's an easy-to-watch film that's bound to alert hundreds of thousands more to the dog that didn't bark in the crime of the century. David's father, David Hooper, was a Navy man. He taught his son that when America's in trouble, her citizens stand up and fight for her. Well, that's exactly what David Jr. has done in making this film. He's become a patriot who doesn't just wave the flag, he's defending it. He's put his relationship with his wife, his family, and his friends, perhaps even his life, on the line. His father would be proud of him. I hope you enjoy the film tonight.
And what you're dealing with is the mainstream media. The ultimate expression of power is not boots on the ground, it's not bombs and guns, it's the hearts and minds of the people. How do you get that?
I was removed. I was definitely in the way. I was very outspoken against the war, and I was subsequently arrested on the Patriot Act and locked up in prison on Carswell Air Force Base while the government rewrote the history books.